All right, Susan, can you tell me a little bit about what led you to decide that you needed air conditioning, and then what were some of the things you were thinking about when you were choosing an air conditioning contractor?
Sure. We've lived in the house about a little over 3 years now, and went through a couple of summers with some in-wall units. Older homes like these often have them in the wall or window units, and decided that to increase the value of our home eventually, and also for our own personal comfort, we really needed to look at installing central air. So we talked to just a lot of people in the Kenwood area who have older homes like ours, same vintage, and looked at outlets in the floor and in the ceilings, and different ways people had the systems installed. We also spoke to friends of ours that actually work with my husband, and they used your company, Uptown Heating and Cooling, and they have an older home in St. Paul, and couldn't speak highly enough about your master carpenters and the finishing work, and then ultimately the system itself and how well it was working. So that's what led us to you, and why we decided on Uptown to complete our air conditioning.
I appreciate that. Can you tell me a little bit about what the process was like?
Sure. I will be very upfront. I was completely nervous about this because I love the moldings and the character of my home and my plaster walls, and I was certainly worried about how all this would work out, even though we had gotten great recommendations. So, and when 10 or 15 workers pulled up to my house at 6:45 in the morning, I was like, oh great, and oh no. But I have to say, the guys were here, they came in the house, and it was a bit like a pit crew. Everybody went through the entire house with you explaining where everything was supposed to go. We may even made a last-minute decision to lower a ceiling in the upstairs hallway, no problem. From that point on, they worked for 12 hours nonstop, but for a 20-minute pizza break, I think, for lunch. And our system was installed and operational by about 4 o'clock. Then the cleanup, the intensive cleanup, and the start of the what I will call the restoration work really got going in earnest. And all of that was completed by the next day. I'm talking about 8-inch moldings replaced so that they look exactly like they did before you got here. The paint color for the outlets that are in our walls absolutely matches perfectly. So it really is not. It's just not intrusive at all. And we've fortunately decided to install the system about the hottest day we've had this spring, and we had several 90+ degree days with humidity, and along with the dehumidifier we have, the house was perfectly comfortable. The air seems to circulate really well, even though we had some difficult places to get the air to. For instance, a front room that doesn't quite lend itself to having all the outlets that it needs. So they even got down to, they had to remove an entire wall in our powder room to install some of the large duct work, if you will. That wall happened to be painted in large stripes, replaced, and the stripes matched perfectly, which I didn't ever think was possible. So in less than 48 hours, we were back to this same house, except for little outlets that even matched the paint. So it was good. It was a good process.
Cool. Now, I think if I remember right, now after the whole thing was said and done, and I think later on in that week, the house cleaner came, and she'd been working with you for 7 years, and she couldn't even tell where we'd been, if I remember right.
That's true. The only thing you didn't get right, we've only been here 3.5,
yeah.
But same thing, she's been working at our house for several years. She didn't even know where the wall had been taken out of the powder room and repainted. They lowered a ceiling in order to put some duct work up there because we had a tricky setup on how this was going to get run in our house. She could not tell that the ceiling had been lowered. It was a higher ceiling. I was a little worried about that at first, from the aspect that would it make it feel closed in? Not at all. She went upstairs and cleaned, didn't know where we had put all the duct work. And she actually said it's much more comfortable to clean because of the cool air. So she was happy too.
Cool. How scary was it, let's say about 10 o'clock on the first day, when we had opened up all the walls? And tell me a little bit about what you were feeling and thinking at that time.
I wanted to be sick, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I would walk downstairs or upstairs, trying to stay out of the way as best I could. But every single person I ran into were so professional, and also reassuring. And they looked at me and said, "Trust me, we've done this a lot. It's got to look bad. It's got to look worse before it gets better." So I left for a while because I just couldn't take it anymore. But less than 48 hours later, I can honestly say it was back to what I had hoped it would be. All moldings repainted, all plaster repaired. The carpets were cleaned up. Most of the dust that they could, any dust they could see was removed. We have dark wood floors, so certainly there's dust when they drilled and things like that. But they were right. It had to get worse before it got better.
Cool. I really appreciate that,
Sure.
Susan. Just going to do a kind of shot of the house here and kind of see. And what year was your house built in?
Let's see. I believe it was 1905, I believe.
1905. Okay. And about how many square feet?
We are about 3,400 square feet.
3,400. All right. Cool. Thanks a lot, Susan.
Sure.